my name is Parastu Imami, and I'm the host of The Road to Success for Your Highly Sensitive Child. This podcast is about empowering parents of highly sensitive children to nurture their child's unique personality trait and create a path to success. Our podcast provides guidance, insight, and support to help you unlock your child's full potential, fostering resilience, confidence, and a bright future. If you're new to my podcast, please go back and listen to episodes 1 and 2 because they provide information on high sensitivity that all subsequent episodes will build upon. If you skip these episodes, you won't get as much out of this and all subsequent episodes. To book a private coaching session with me, please visit my website at parentinghsc.com. If you're looking for a talented portrait photographer, I highly recommend Laurie Bishop of Become Studios. Check her website out at www.becomebeseen.com. You can find this link in my podcast description. For a limited time, if you use the promo code PARASTU100, you will get a $100 credit towards photo purchases. Today, I have the pleasure of having Dortha Hise as my guest. Dortha, it's so wonderful to have you here. Thank you so much for being my guest. I am so blessed that you accepted my invitation to be my guest. And I'm so proud of you for having the courage to be vulnerable with us and share your life's journey with us today and helping me with my mission in life of really bringing awareness to high sensitivity and acceptance as well. And also to help parents of highly sensitive children know what impact they have on their children when they don't use the proper parenting technique or parenting method of with highly sensitive children, because it's really different. Raising a highly sensitive child is so much different than raising a non-highly sensitive child. So thank you so much, Dortha. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm really
Happy
grateful to
have
be
you.
here. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm grateful to be here as well.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it takes a lot of courage to do what you're doing, and I remember when I first did this, when I first I decided to be vulnerable and share my life journey with the listeners. I realized, everybody all over the world is going to know me and know my life history. And it's not easy. It's not easy to share something, especially when it has been so painful.
Yeah.
But thank you. I really appreciate
It's
you.
my
And I know
pleasure.
that the listeners are going to gain a lot from our conversation today.
I hope so. Yeah. That's why we're here, right? To try and help
Yes,
make an impact and a difference. So yeah, I look forward to
absolutely.
the conversation.
Thank you. Thank you. So let's start by you telling us a little bit about yourself and then maybe get into, talking about your journey so far.
Yeah. Well, I guess a good place to start is, I was my mom and was pregnant with me, not married to my dad. And she had two kids from her previous marriage that I don't remember how old they were when I was born, but the dynamics with family were really complicated when I was born. And so I feel like I kind of came into a very stressful. My birth was very stressful for my mom. She had to have an emergency hysterectomy. It was very traumatic, probably for both of us. Not knowing what it was like for me in the moment,
Yeah.
but I would have to imagine it was probably pretty stressful. We were actually separated for the first month that I was alive. And
Mm.
so I didn't get a lot of the mommy baby bonding time.
Yeah.
And so that's like kind of a little bit of like how I came into the world. And, my journey along the way has, I think I haven't really been familiar with the term highly sensitive.
Mhm.
Like I think a lot of people probably haven't. And,
Yeah, that's right.
my husband was like, well, I think I've heard it before. And I'm like, well, tell me what you think it means. And
Yeah.
it's always just sort of fun to like hear what people think. I was reading up a little bit before that we started this recording, and people seem to think that like over dramatic and like extra sensitive, like, you're just like, and I'm thinking, no, like it's not that. It's that, I'm very astutely aware, and I'm very like observant, and I notice a lot of things. And it's just kind of interesting to hear people when they're not in, like, and it's not that you have to be in the know, but it's just interesting to see what people think they
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, it's very fascinating because every time I ask someone, like, okay, tell me when they say, I know what high sensitivity is about, I say, okay, well, I would love to learn about it from you.
Yeah.
And they say, oh, yeah, it means that, the person is overly emotional and they take things personally and they're very like, they cry easily.
Oh,
Like,
wow.
okay, yeah, no, I mean, that's definitely not the definition of high sensitivity. There's four components of it,
Yeah.
and it's actually such a, and then the other thing is that a lot of people look at it as something that's super negative, it's
Yes.
high sensitivity. The word high sensitivity by itself has a negative connotation. But when I describe a highly sensitive person to people, then they go, oh my God, that's like a person that has a lot of superpowers. I'm like, yes, absolutely. Thank you. And
We have to pick which cape we want to wear today.
well, the thing is too, like yes, one of the components is getting overwhelmed or
Yeah.
stimulation, but that's because
Yes.
we take a lot in and we feel very deeply. So we get overstimulated. But
Yes.
the thing is, if we know how to manage our nervous system, because we have a very finely tuned nervous system. So
Mm.
if we know how to use, for example, somatic practices is what I teach my clients.
Yep.
We know how to regulate our nervous system, we won't get overwhelmed anymore, especially children. Children, it's very easy to help children not get overwhelmed. It's just taking 5 minutes out of your time every day to teach your child to regulate their nervous system. And they're constantly going to be regulated if they're doing this as a daily practice. And that one negative aspect of being highly sensitive will immediately go out the door.
Yeah. Yeah.
It will always be there. All of this aspect of us, all four aspects will always be there because this is a genetic um, personality trait. So you're never going to get it out of your system um, since you're born that way. But definitely you can have tools to help you out.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I've talked with people about grief like this as well, where, it's that same thing of like just taking a minute and like taking a breath. Right. A lot of times it's just getting caught in that moment of, I know this happened for me a lot as I thought before we started this conversation, like I was thinking back to my childhood, and there's a lot that I can't remember.
Hmm.
And things that I can remember, I do remember feeling that sense of like, if I could have just been told, like, take a deep breath and just take a minute,
Hmm.
like this won't feel so much, and you won't
Yeah,
be so overwhelmed, and you won't have all of this stimuli coming at you, and it can just be like so much that you're like, "Meh." And then
yeah,
then people think, oh, like she's standoffish, or something like that, right? And it's an interesting, you get lumped into categories like being an introvert and and there's nothing wrong with being an introvert,
yeah,
but it's just not exactly what you are, right? And
yeah,
it's if you had known the label to put on it, it would make it easier to navigate and easier to talk to other people about. And I mean, granted, for what it's worth, when we were kids, a lot of our world didn't probably know a lot about this type of person. And I think, oh gosh, I think if I had known, I definitely would have had lots of different choices.
yeah, for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit more about your childhood.
Yeah. Well, I had pretty deep abandonment. In the first 5 years that I was born, my birth dad actually left my mom while we were in the hospital. Um, and then my half brother and sister that I mentioned that were living with us left to live with their dad when I was 5.
Mm,
So um, I remember very, very, very specifically probably the first time I knew that I had this probably unusual understanding of another human's emotions was when I watched my parents completely fall apart when my sister and brother ran away. And I remember we were in the living room and I just watched. I had never seen my mom or dad cry. I mean, I had a stepdad at this point. I had never seen either of them cry.
mhm,
And they like both fell apart and like it hurt me. And I just the feeling of there's nothing I can do and why am I feeling like so terrible, like
mhm.
absorbing that,
Yeah.
horrible pain for them. And it was just like that was, I think, probably if I were to pinpoint specifically, there may have been time before that, but that's definitely a moment that I really recall
Mm.
saying, okay, like this is different. I
Yeah,
went,
because you were feeling their pain
yeah,
in your body, right?
yes. Hmm.
So you could not just, so the empathy that we have is not just feeling somebody's emotion, but we go deeper than that and we actually
Yeah.
feel it in our physical body.
Yes. Yeah. And I remember watching there was a TV show and I can't remember what it was now, but I remember watching it and there was a scene very similar where the parents had a teenage daughter who was taken from them
Mhm.
and they had a very similar depiction of what happened in what I remember happening when I was little. And I was like brought right back to that moment because it was just like, oh my God, like they nailed that sentiment and this actress is like really good and she's crying and like I could just feel it and it was like, holy cow. And it's interesting how some of those kinds of experiences can bring us back, literally like right back to that moment of that feeling and the
Yeah,
that whole experience. So that would be the first time I would say that I really knew like something was different about the way I felt things.
I see.
Uh, and then I did have, I don't know how old I was, but we had a family get together
Mhm.
and there was somebody there that just I wanted nothing to do with. I had like all of my little spidey senses were like, do not touch me. I had a total breakdown, like meltdown. I was screaming and crying and like, don't touch me
Wow.
and like running away from him.
Wow.
And found out later that when I was an adult, I found out later that he had molested um, some kids in the family. And so my senses were, that intuition and that like gut feel of this person is not a good person. And that was 100% spot on. And every time I have ever questioned that or gone against that, it's always bit me. So it was one of
Yeah,
those things
same
I
thing with
learned.
me. Yeah,
Hmm.
I totally get that. And it's so amazing. So I'm so proud of you that at that age, you decided to listen to
Yeah.
what your body was telling you because your body was telling you, no, 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 I don't want to have anything to do with this situation. That was not just your empathy kicking in and picking up the energy of the other person, but also your intuition.
Yeah.
And that's the thing about how we talk about it's beyond empathy for us. It's some emotional sensitivity that we have where we can pick up the energy of the not just of the people around us, but of the environment, of the room, of the situation, the whole thing.
Yeah.
That's why we feel so deeply, and that's why we get overstimulated, is because this is a lot to take on, you know? And if you're a child, can you imagine what that child must have been like the child version of you, what
Yeah.
you must have gone through in that moment. I can
Right.
imagine that's
Me
why
either.
we're like screaming, like, of
Yeah.
course, because it was so intense.
And I think of it now when I look at kids that are in some situation where they're having a complete meltdown. And I'm like, I wonder what's like really going on there. If
Yeah.
it's, are they just acting out or is it something like what I had, where I didn't
Yeah.
know that I was highly sensitive. And, it took me 40 something years to figure that out.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting to see that from the eyes of, because we don't have children, that we don't have that one-on-one proximity to see it happen, but we do see it when we're out and about. So it's always kind of interesting to think, I wonder
Yeah.
what's going on there.
Yeah, for sure. And it's really interesting for me, when a child is having a breakdown and I happen to be there, I have a way of like getting that child to calm down, even if I don't know them. Like
Mm,
I know, I don't know, some people may think this is strange, but if I see a child having a meltdown, I always go and ask the parent if I can help. And the child, the minute I start talking to the parent and see if I can help, the child automatically starts calming down in my presence. And
mm,
I feel like it's because I'm sending them energy of my positive energy of, hey, you're okay, you've got this, you know, let's figure out how we can help you. They feel that from me. And so
yeah.
immediately they start like paying attention to me and, oh, who is this person? What are they doing? And they let me in, they let
Hmm.
me in to help them, which is really amazing for me. It's like,
That's
wow,
awesome.
this is somebody that doesn't even know me. I can have an impact like that on them. Or even like when I've gone to concerts, and like little kids would run up to me, and then like if I'm seated, they would just sit on my lap. I'm like, hello, who are you? Where's your parent?
I love it.
I
I
know.
I've noticed something similar with animals for myself, like that I have some sort of soothing something,
Yeah.
except for the squirrels in my backyard. They are, they get a pass on something else. I don't know, but I have noticed that like dogs in particular,
Mhm.
birds, like just a lot of animals. I had an experience when I was a kid that my grandma used to live on property in Angel's Camp. And every time we would go to her house, I would always look for the wild horses.
Mhm.
And I was never afraid of them. I would just like go grab apples and carrots and like run out into the field to go talk to them because like that was just like what I did. And I mean, it's not like they talked back to me, but like there was a symbiosis
Oh
and
yeah, for sure.
they felt my love and passion for like nature and just being with them.
And you know what? It's fascinating that you were drawn to these horses because there's been a study done for highly sensitive people. Horses are very, very healing.
Mm,
Yeah, there's the energy that they have and just the way that they interact with us. They feel us and
hmm.
they can, even though they can't talk to us, but they can communicate with us and they can take our pain away, like
Yeah.
soothe us. And it's fascinating that you knew intuitively that the horse was good for you.
Yeah, yeah, and I think I was maybe like 10 or
Hmm.
so. My parents were terrified I was going to get trampled, and I had like no fears in the world. I was just like, oh
Yeah,
yeah, let me go talk to my friends. But
yeah,
it's interesting you said that about highly sensitive people also benefiting from being in interaction with them. I know there's therapy for people with PTSD that
yeah.
it's also very
With
therapeutic, and
horses, yeah.
just like love to know that they have so many benefits. They're such
Yeah,
amazing
absolutely.
creatures.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I remember actually, we went to Germany one year and we were living there for a little bit because my dad wanted to see what it's like to live in Germany. We were deciding on whether to live in Germany or living to go to the US. So we lived there and there was like a field. And by that field, there were all these horses, and they were just roaming around in the field. And so I remember we would take apples and carrots for them and we would feed them after school every day. It was so, I mean, by we, it was really just me. And then some kids that I didn't know would come as well. But it was, I remember how happy that made me feel that I got
Yeah.
so excited to get home from school, to go and grab some food from the fridge and take it down to the field. And the field was not like next to our house. It was quite a bit
Yeah.
away. So I
Yeah.
had to walk to the field. But I remember having this tiny little basket with my fruit in it, with my horses that I was gonna go feed. And they were like huge in comparison to me.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's amazing. I love it.
So you mentioned that, like there's two parts of your high sensitivity that you recognize by the time you were 10 years old. One is your high intuition, high empathy, and then picking up on people's energies. What else did you experience as a child, including like, what are some things that your parents did, whether it was their parenting style or anything else that you can remember, that now that you're grown up and you know about high sensitivity, you wish they would have known about high sensitivity and you wish that they would have done things differently with you?
Well, I think you and I touched on this a little bit in one of our, previous conversations that one of the things that I think stands out for me is, I was pretty creative as a kid, and it wasn't something that was really encouraged.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt like I needed to be more studious, and like I was already pretty smart, like book smart. So I didn't really understand why I couldn't be like this other, like a little bit creative. And so as I grew up, and I actually still have conflicts about this because as you know, I do graphic design and some things in that world. And it's my analytical brain, my logical brain still fights with me about like, you can't be doing this. This is not a good use of your time. Like this isn't going to pay the bills and all the things. And so I have to sit with that sometimes and just sit back and say, it's okay. Like you can do this. Like people do get paid for this and you get paid for this.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's one. And I think the other one that I had mentioned to you was the do your best was really like I would come home with grades or a test and my parents would say, well, did you do your best? And that was really hard for me to like get my head around because I didn't know. And so it always kind of stumped me because I'm like, think I did my best, but I don't know.
Mhm,
Is there more I could have done? Maybe, I don't know. So that
mhm,
was a really hard, um, kind of weird thing for me to navigate because I was already super competitive with myself.
mhm,
And to feel like my parents were almost questioning, you know, well,
mhm,
could you have done more? It just sort of made me like second guess myself and feel like, oh, well, okay, maybe I should do more next time.
mhm, mhm. So I want to talk about the first part. So the creativity. Oh my God, highly sensitive people are extremely creative people. And I really wish that parents would allow their children to use their creativity and don't think that, oh, artists don't make that much money, or that won't pay the bills, because you have so many other aspects to you. The creativity is just one aspect, it's
Right.
not like you have to depend on that for your income. But how amazing would it be if they would have let you, um, you know, put more effort into your creativity, because that's something that you're naturally born with. And I always encourage parents to find out what their child is natural at, because
Yeah.
if we just focus on that and strengthen that part, then the child already has something amazing that they can use when they grow up, because they're now constantly focusing on getting better and better at that. And by the way, highly sensitive people are like this, where they're constantly improving. Whether somebody tells you to or not doesn't matter. We do that like we do that no matter what. Like we're
Yeah.
constantly seeing how we can be better. And like you said, you were very competitive with yourself. And I love that. I love how you said with yourself and not with
Mm,
somebody else,
yeah.
because that's the perfectionist in us, right? And I'm
Yep.
not an advocate for perfectionism, because I learned the hard way that it's not a good thing to be perfectionist. I was a perfectionist most of my life, and I learned finally at the age of, I would say, 35, not to be a perfectionist. But it's always good to work on ourselves to be better. It's kind of like the soft and
Sure.
the analogy, because I was in the software world, the analogy that I always have is, there's a software development cycle. One is a waterfall, the other one is agile. Agile is all about continuous improvement. So you constantly make little changes to your software and release faster. You have faster
Yeah.
releases, but you're always making improvements and adding new features and making your software better. That's
Hmm.
kind of like how highly sensitive people work. We're constantly, as a child, I mean, we're born to do this, right? It's not something that we were taught. We were just born to do this, that you're constantly improving yourself and you're constantly doing the best that you can in whatever situation that you're in.
Hmm.
That's why it takes us a little bit longer to get something done, because we don't just do, a halfway. I have to be polite on this show, but we don't do a halfway work, right?
Yeah.
We do something, we put all of our effort in it, and we do the absolute best, so that and also we don't just do whatever is asked of us. If we think that something else can also be added to whatever it is that we're working on, we will do that, because we're like,
Hmm.
okay, yeah, I was told to build this house, but I know that if I build this house with a nice garden and an extra bathroom and this and that, it would be better. So we
Mm.
do that. We do go that extra mile to make things even better than what we were supposed to do, right?
Yeah.
So that's one thing that I really encourage parents to let your child have be creative, figure out what they're creative, and it could be multiple things. But highly sensitive people are actually extremely creative people. And who says that artists don't make money? There are a lot of artists in this world that I know of that make a really good living. So
Yeah.
it's possible. And also, like, as a graphic designer, for example, I know a lot of graphic designers that are extremely successful, including yourself.
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean that you can't make money off of these creative ways that you have inherent in you.
Yeah. And a big one for me, I don't, I think what it was for me was not understanding that there were different types of creativity. As a kid, I
Yeah.
was a dancer, and,
Hmm.
I did tap ballet and jazz when I was little, and my parents, like, mostly encouraged that. I think they thought it was good for me to get a little bit of discipline.
Hmm.
And like for socialization purposes, I think they also found that to be helpful. Um, but it wasn't like I knew some of my friends were in like ice skating and some other sports where like their parents were taking them to like the utmost of the utmost of the utmost. Like they were doing like competitions and they were in leagues and like all of those kinds of, and I call it crazy things because it was like that they were never available to do things with their friends. But I look back at that and I also realize one of the things I was really good at and something that I am still good at is writing.
Hmm.
I wrote stories when I was a kid. I used to have all these little, I made up stories and I had
That's
pictures and like
amazing.
I would glue pictures into these little books. I would get like
Wow.
a little notebook and like write the story. And it was, yeah, I remember that very, I had forgotten about that piece of it, but until we were just
That's
talking
so
about it just
cool.
now.
I love
Yeah.
it. That's really awesome. As we wrap up today's episode, I want to remind you that you have the power to create a bright and successful future for your highly sensitive child. Embrace their uniqueness, nurture their strengths, and provide them with the love and support they need. Together, we can pave a path to success that aligns with their sensitivity. Thank you for joining us today. And remember, you're not alone on this journey. We'll be here with more insights and inspiration in our next episode. Until then, keep believing in your child's potential because they truly are extraordinary. Stay tuned, stay inspired, and stay committed to setting your child up for success in life. If you enjoyed this episode and found it helpful, please leave a review, share with other parents, and reach out to us with any topics you'd like us to cover in the future. To book a private coaching session with me, please visit my website at parentinghsc.com.